Okay, in this lesson, we have a very complicated problem to solve from Project Euler. This is taken from problem 17, and it's called the number letter counts problem. And it gives us the example of if we have a number range from 1 to 5, and they're printed out saying in actual spelled out, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you take each one of those words and you count the letters. So 2 has 3 letters, and 1 has 3 letters, 2 has 3 letters, 3 has 5 letters, all the way down. And if you take each one of those and then add them together, you get 19 letters in total. Now, what our problem is to figure this out, except instead of 1 to 5, 1 to 1,000. Now, this is a pretty tricky one unless that you've heard of the Ruby Humanize method, or Humanize library. So what we're going to do is first require this gem called Humanize. And if you do not have Humanize installed, then you can install it in the terminal running gem install Humanize. And after you do that, you'll have access to the methods we need here. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up some empty variables. So I'm going to call this the no space array and total. And I'm going to set our no space array, set that equal to an empty array, and then set total equal to 0. And now let's first create an array set from 1 to 1,000 elements and convert it to an array. Since this collection of 1 to 1,000 is of integers, we can just call toArray on it, and that'll give us our array. And now let's call the map method on it, and this is where we're going to pass the Humanize method. And so this Humanize method is going to be called on each one of the elements here. And so let's see what this is going to do for us. So I'm going to say Ruby Project Euler 17 and see what this prints out. Oh, let's see. Load error, cannot load such file. Humanize. Okay, let's see. Maybe I put that here. Gem install Humanize. Let it install that gem. I must have installed on one of my other computers. Okay, so that worked. Now let's run it again. There we go. Okay, so that's good. You got to see what the error looks like if you didn't have the gem installed. And you can see how cool this is. So this Humanize gem pulls in each one of the values from 1 to 1,000 and converts it into words, which is something that's pretty neat. It's usually you'd have to spend a gigantic amount of time and bring in a lot of data in order to make that possible. But by just calling Humanize on it, this worked just like that for us. So now that we have that and we have this array, now in this next step, we're going to iterate over the humanized array, and we're going to call the delete method twice. And the reason we need to call it twice is we need to remove spaces and dashes and then add each one of those essentially those cleaned up elements into the array so that we can count them. So then after that, we can simply iterate over it and count up the letters and sum up each one of those elements. So let's see this. So we are going to call each, and I'm going to pass an iterator variable of word, and then we'll say our no space array is here, and we're just going to dump whatever words we're pulling out. So I'm going to first delete all the spaces. So the way you do that is you say word, which is the iterator element, and say we want to delete these spaces. So what does a space represent? This would represent, let's see, we'll call this again. Okay, so spaces would represent things like this, 899, things like that. That's what the spaces would do. So we're going to delete those spaces, And then we're also going to delete the dashes, because right here we have dashes like this, and we don't want those either. So we can simply chain this on. So that's why we're calling delete on it twice. And so now let's see what this, saving it, let's see what this would return us. It didn't seem to work. Let's see, I saved it to map. Oh yeah, that's because we're not actually changing any of those elements yet. Let me make it so we're not printing this out, but instead we're printing out the no space array. Run it again, and you can see now it's combined each one of the words. It's gotten rid of the spaces, and it has got rid of the dashes. Okay, so that is all working. Now we're going to chain another iterator variable, or iterator on it, and this is going to go through each item now in our cleaned up and remove space and dash array, and it's going to create our total for us. So I'm going to say each, and we'll just call this our element for the iterator variable, but you could call it anything you want. And this is getting pretty long, so let me make sure I have word wrap on. And so I'm going to say element, and then we're going to take our total right here, and we're simply going to add the element length. Okay, I believe this is right. Okay, just let me review this really quick. Okay, so we have this array. We know that this one works. And now we want to iterate over that array. We're going to take each element, and we're taking our total here, which starts at 0, and this plus equals is going to take whatever's on the right hand side, and it's going to pile it in and add it on here. So if you have numbers like 1, 5, and 7, and you have a total variable and you iterate over it, when you go at 1 is going to get added to 0, so it'll be 1, then 1 will get added to 5, it'll be 6, and then 6 will get added to 7, you'll end up with 13. So that's essentially the way this would work. But here we're looking for the element length. So we're looking for how many letters this takes up. So I believe this is working. So now let's, instead of printing this out, because we don't want to print this out, we actually want to print the total. So let's get our total and run it again. And the answer is 24,527, and I've confirmed that that is correct. That's the answer to the Project Euler 17 question. So great job if you went through that one. That one was a little bit more complex, but as you can see, another really, really cool set of ways that you can chain methods and algorithms together and get a ton of work done in a pretty short amount of code with Ruby.